Welcome to the Chosson Shmooze and Kallah Shmooze you wish you had, but never got, Part 5. As I've said originally, and I remind everybody kindly to listen to these discussions in order from the beginning, because as we go on, we're going to cover more and more sensitive material, and we need to do our homework and be prepared for each step as it comes along. So, we were in the middle of talking about distorted beliefs, actually, the 13 distorted beliefs that affect and disturb marital harmony. And today we are up to the fourth belief. And the fourth distorted belief that we're going to talk about is the notion that when somebody's angry and they say hurtful things, people ascribe a higher level of truth and validity to that. So, for example, you get into a fight and you hurl an insult at your spouse or a family member. Usually, part of the apology process involves somehow trying to convince the other person that you didn't really mean it, which, of course, on the one hand makes sense, and on the other hand, it's absurd because you said it. And usually the argument people give back to you is, so now you show your true colors. That's what you really think of me. And I ask everybody to take a moment and wonder why, if somebody says something when they're angry and out of control, would we assume that's what they really think of us? Now, let's be realistic. It does tell you, because when people are angry, they're less inhibited. So it tells you that they had genuine thoughts about you that they thought better of saying. The thoughts might be genuine, but they might not be the only thoughts. So, if you're angry at somebody and you say, oh, you're an idiot and an irresponsible fool, of course, on some level, you meant that, but you might also think the person has some fantastic qualities, even some qualities where the person is the opposite of an idiot and the opposite of somebody who is irresponsible. Now, there's also a mental version of an optical illusion that takes place here, which is that human beings are hardwired to overvalue, understand this, to overvalue potentially threatening and dangerous information. Now, if you were an evolutionary psychologist, you would say that we evolved that way. If you're a believer, you would say that Hashem built that in us as a survival skill. But understand the truth of this. To all you listeners out there, if I told you that the first 100 people that send me an email are going to get $1,000, you could decide to believe that or not. If I told you, if you don't send me an email, a gunman is going to come and shoot up your house. Chas v'shalom. So there's a sense of foreboding, a sense of fear. And the psychological cost of ignoring something potentially dangerous is much higher. Because if you ignore my warning, something bad might happen to you. You might suffer. If you ignore my possible offer of benefit, then the worst that'll happen is you won't have $1,000. So we are very wired deep in us to give more gravity to things that are negative and threatening. And it's not something we can totally help. That's why bad news travels faster. There's something very powerful. And that's why when somebody says something hurtful to you, it's a lot harder to shake the injury, the emotional injury, than it is for a compliment to make you feel better. Based on some research, you might even say that you need 5-to-1, 5 compliments to every insult, just to make up for that difference, for that weight that we attach to negativity. So, what is the Musar Haskell, as it were? When somebody says something mean to us, or we say something mean when we're angry, we can't afford to ignore it, and we must apologize for it. However, it would be beneficial for the other person to understand that there is a degree of distortion. There is a degree of putting more weight in this negativity than any positive feelings. And it is, to some extent, an emotional illusion. Okay, now, the fifth distorted belief is that love itself, is something that you either have or you don't. And it's something that you are powerless to. Now, this is a concept that certainly has been espoused by initially romantic literature and ideas of romance probably in the last few hundred years, and then further developed in cinema and other kinds of media. This idea that love is this magical, overpowering force that we are essentially powerless to make or break. Now, it is a very powerful force, and it's a wonderful and beautiful thing. And some people are very fortunate, and we'll talk about this in a few moments. Some people are very fortunate that there is an immediate kind of bond or connection, and they feel it. You might call it love at first sight. If they have that, that's great, although it's not always the best reason to get married. Some people could feel that connection and not be the best marriage partners, but it's very valuable and not to be discounted. But there are plenty of people that don't have love immediately, and it can take a long time for love to develop. But the notion that we're powerless to it is actually not true. Here's what is true. What is true is that marriage is something that is, in many respects, magical. And like many things in the world that are beautiful and magical and wondrous, we don't have a lot of control over it. I mean, we do not have control whether or not we're going to have children, and we don't have control whether or not, if we plant a seed, an apple tree is going to grow. But here is the thing. We do know optimal conditions under which those miraculous occurrences happen. We know that if we plant a seed and we water it, we know that there's a possibility that an apple tree will grow. We know that if we engage in sexual intercourse in the right time, in the right way, there's a good chance that a pregnancy will develop. And if we take care of the health of the mother, we know that there's a very good chance that a healthy child will be born. Now, the actual miracle of life, we really have no control over, as many people who struggle to conceive certainly know about. The point is, though, that there's many things that we can do that make it likely or make it possible for it to happen. And that's how we have to look at love. We have to look at love as something that is indeed magical. It's a miracle, and it's wonderful, and it may happen quickly, and it may happen slowly, and it may not happen. But there are things that we can do that will cultivate it, and things that we can do that could kill it. And what are those things? The obvious things. Being a friend, being a support, taking an interest in the person's life, making the person's happiness your mission, your goal. All the obvious things, caring, providing safety. These are powerful things, and they really help. And how fast it will help and what will happen is a very good question. But it will be likely to happen just as likely as if you plant an apple seed, an apple tree will grow. This is something that is important for us to digest. Now, let's talk a little bit about, so to speak, the newlywed glow. Some people have it for a short amount of time, especially if things go bad and there's some type of emotional trauma, very painful beginnings of introductions to sexuality for some people, especially if they don't get the right guidance. We will talk about that later on in this series for sure. But there is this kind of newlywed glow. According to the research, it lasts about 2 years, meaning the sense of freshness, the sense of excitement, the passion and romance will last for about 2 years, and then it fades. Now, the question is, what is this? And the question is, what's the purpose of it? Now, if you looked at it cynically, again, from an evolutionary psychology point of view, you would say that, well, nature is extremely efficient. So nature only invests the amount of energy that it needs in order to get the job done. So basically, over about 2 years, the chances are that the female partner will get pregnant, and then the male and the female will be bonded together through the child, and they'll both be very occupied with taking care of the child. And so, mission accomplished. But a deeper way of looking at this that I suggest that you all take very seriously is think about God as the ultimate investment banker. What does an investment banker do? An investment banker lends a certain amount of capital, a certain amount of money to a profitable venture, a hopefully profitable venture, in the hopes that this investment is going to pay off. So the investor will front a certain amount of money, and the firm that has this angel investor, as it were, and we have the angels too that help us in our shalom bias, the angel investor basically serves notice that I'm going to fund you for a certain period of time, and it is your mission during that period of time to gradually bring the company from the red into the black, from losing money to breaking even to making a profit. So if the researchers are correct that the newlywed glow and the passion and romance falls away after about 2 years, that means God is fronting us 2 years of investment capital. He's giving us a passion, a natural attachment to each other. And now we have these 2 years. So if we sit for 2 years on our hands and we don't try to figure out how to make this business self-sustaining and profitable, well, then when the money runs out, the company's going to go bankrupt because the angel investor is not going to throw bad money after good. But if we use those 2 years starting day one, when the clock is ticking and we know that within 2 years we need to make this venture self-sustaining and profitable, then we have a real chance to keep it going. So from day one of your marriage, there is a need to invest emotionally and psychologically with your full heart, everything you can do to create the optimal conditions for love to grow. And when love grows, eventually it becomes self-sustaining. But it's up to you, and you have to keep it up.